Hi, let's see, I'm trying not to cover up the uh, microphone hole or whatever I keep doing in some of my videos where I cut off like at least half the sound or the stereo sound or whatever. So I'm going to talk about the impeachment. They're trying to put, Herr Trump in a peach again. And like, the funny thing is, like, well, no, there's nothing not funny about this, I guess. But one funny thing is, like, you can impeach a president after they leave office. I just learned that on the Twitter. So either that's true or it's not true, and it's just something wrong I learned on the Twitter. But um, but it's probably true. Seems legit. And if that's true, it means that they could fail by some, small margin to impeach Trump this time. And, there could be like a few Democrats that hold out or something, and maybe, two people, one or two in the Senate, or somebody abstains or whatever, and so it doesn't pass. And then, even after Biden takes office, like they can just keep impeaching Trump. Like they can just keep trying to impeach Trump forever. And then, like, ideally for them, somebody will always stop them because, like, that's their favorite politics, like last year, they didn't, they didn't prepare us for COVID. Everybody said, "Oh, COVID's coming, yada yada. It's gonna disrupt the economy. It's gonna, kill people." And the Democrats said, "Oh, cool, let's impeach Trump over, Ukraine or whatever the thing was." No, what was the thing? Over Pompeo, or I don't know, some Russiagate type thing, I think. Um, yeah, I don't care. I hope I got it wrong because I don't care. I know it was something stupid that was not nearly as bad as half the shit they do in Congress every day. So, um, I mean, sure, Trump, impeach everybody in Congress. Anybody who voted for Pelosi, anybody who voted for the Republican, who I'm sure is just as bad, as Speaker of the House, yeah, impeach all of them. That should be like, that should be obvious, to anybody with principles that pretty much everybody in government is is terrorist. Um, but yeah, like, so they're impeaching Trump. That's their favorite politics. I mean, it's a way to not have to do anything else. It's a reason. So they'll say like, well, they could be fighting for $2,000 checks right now, something like that. They could be fighting for, Medicare for all. Obviously, like, Biden doesn't support Medicare for all. So, I mean, arguably, I would say, hey, Biden says he'll veto Medicare for all, then try to pass it before, maybe Trump wouldn't veto it. I mean, um, in this topsy-turvy world, like, who knows? Um, but yeah, so it's like performative uh, theater, political theater, which is, Pelosi's the only thing she I wouldn't say she excels at it, but it's kind of all she has. Um, besides just being fascist. Uh, so I mean, obviously, hashtag resistors are all lining up behind this thing, and they're all like, "Rah, rah, rah, impeach." Um, and but I mean, a lot of the left, or quote unquote, now we find out, like, or I guess now it becomes more uh universally apparent what what I've been saying for a long time, which is that a lot of the people that call themselves leftists, even like, even people who might call themselves radicals, and the rose Twitter, quote unquote democratic socialists, and people with Antifa, BLM, ACAB, whatever in their Twitter bios, that a lot of them are actually like not even leftists. Like, a lot of them are just um, neolibs who are just trying to follow a trend. And maybe they're not complete neolibs. Maybe they're like, they'd be okay with a certain amount of socialism, but at the end of the day, they like cuck for you know, the resistors, and the kind of fake faux liberals, basically neocons that run the Democratic Party. So it's but this is beautiful to see that there are people that are standing up and calling them out and saying, like, well, this is nonsense. I mean, especially in regards to the impeachment thing. I think that there are even people who really bought into the, oh my god, there's a coup, yada yada, they're all terrorists. Like, even some of them, at least now, they're starting to see, like, oh well, this like impeachment thing is like, is dumb. It's a ploy. It's like the guy has like how many weeks left, and he conceded. He basically conceded. They're going to impeach him because he's not going to attend Biden's inauguration. Like, you know, it took somebody as petty as Trump to show how petty the freaking Democrats are. Yeah, they're even pettier than him, which is a little astounding, I guess. But not if you know them, not for those of us who are used to their shenanigans, and basically never bought into the like poorly packaged lies that they saw. So yeah, so that's insane. Like, that's insane to try and impeach it. A guy who, because of something they claim he tweeted, like, okay, I don't know what exactly he tweeted. I guess he said, "Hey, everybody, come down to the protests in the, you know, electoral college, whatever." Um, so, but I'm sure if it was really damning, if it was really incriminating against him, then that's all we would see. We just see that quoted all over the place, because like they, a lot of times they just don't get really any of the dirt they're like claiming they have on him. So they, all you ever see is just like, Trump did something terrible and criminal and treason and yada yada, but you never see what it is, because if you saw what they're actually talking about, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's kind of a nothing burger. Because like, I mean, it was like with the phone call, they said like, oh, he's going down now. He did this phone call to like the governor of some, Pennsylvania or something. But just by the fact, like, if they had something incriminating in that phone call, like literally incriminating, I think they would lead with that, and you just see that quote. You'd say like, "Oh, Trump said this. It's incriminating. We're taking him down." But instead, you just have these whole articles about like saying it's incriminating, not quoting it, and it's just the same thing like with Russiagate, where they're always like, "Oh yeah, he's going down now. He's going down now." Like every week, there's like, "Oh no, now we have the evidence. Now he's going down." But often they wouldn't even tell you really what the evidence was that they were getting, because it's like it's nothing. So they just have to just keep saying like, "Oh yeah, this is it. He's going down." So yeah, like if somebody says that this, he's going down, this is criminal, we got the proof, but they don't lead with the actual proof, they don't quote it, be skeptical. Yeah, I at least am very skeptical in that circumstance. So so yeah, like and the phone call, like I would love, so apparently the phone call was released, which shows, that if anything, the elites of Washington are against Trump, even the Republicans, which we are always kind of knew. Um, but like I would like to see the phone call from Obama to, you know, Amy, to Pete. Uh, Thankfully, I've forgotten these people's weird names, but the Democratic primary um, contenders, Amy Stapler and Pete the rat fucker. So yeah, he made a little phone call to them, made a little phone call to Yang, probably. I don't know. He made phone calls to everybody. He made a phone call to Bernie. And somehow magically after these phone calls, all these people dropped out of the race. Pretty consequential for American democracy and for the world, since America is, the cop of the world, etc. Um, how did this happen? What happened to this election? Did people vote? Did Was it a vote? Is that what happened? No, no, it was a phone call from Obama. I would like to hear that phone call, but ain't nobody gonna leak that. Certainly, Amy and Pete won't, and Bernie won't either. He's not much better than them. Uh, when it comes to being servile to the establishment. He like he's less servile usually, but you know, not nearly enough less. Anyway, so that's a phone call I would like to see transcript of, you know, and and hear it and smell it, taste it. No, probably smells really bad, tastes bad. It's a bad phone call. It was a phone call. These are phone calls that ended our democracy. Like that was the real coup to me. Like America wants Bernie. Like America doesn't want Biden. Like if you look at Biden's policies and you look at the policies that Americans support, it's very clear that America doesn't want Biden. America wants Bernie, and just polls generally showed that Bernie had a much more solid uh, support. Like Biden had a grotesquely overinflated amount of support just because of Obama, because a lot of Americans are just, I wouldn't say just that they're stupid, but just that um, they're stupid, but deliberately. They're like, they just rather not know or care. They're like, well, Obama something, okay, yeah, Biden, he was his VP, okay, I did my job in politics. Like they don't want to think, they don't want to have to think. Like if you don't want to have to think, it's not like they're just dumb. Like it's not like they can't figure this stuff out. It's like a lot of them, they don't want to have to think, especially they don't want to have to be responsible like morally for society, because a lot of regular people are not moral people in general. So they just rather just say, well, Obama, Biden, the leaders just defer to them. They're our captains. We'll trust them and follow them, whatever. So anyway, so we got this impeachment going. Um, impeachment campaign, I guess we could call it. I just find it amazing. I'm not sure specifically if it's more about the phone call, because like they were gonna do that anyway based on the phone call, it seemed like, or they were at least talking about, like, because he called this governor or whatever, Pennsylvania or wherever it was, whatever state, they wanted to impeach him based on that. Then this thing at the Capitol. Um, oh wow, I think I am covering the damn thing again. I think I found it. This must be it. It's like this little grate at the bottom is the microphone-ish thing. I'm guessing. I don't know. Here, I'll just hold it by the sides here, and there's no like holes there to be covered. Yay. Um, so they're gonna impeach him. So they wanted to do that anyway, and then this thing where the Trumpers storming the Capitol is just like the new impet not impetus necessarily, but the new justification, the added justification, whatever. Um, but it's a pretty hilarious justification because it's like they're accusing him of instigating this event, but like during the event, he was the one tweeting out like, "Go home, everybody! Like, be peaceful, go home." And Twitter, like, covered up that tweet. Like they allowed his tweets where he said, "Hey, come protest," or whatever he said. Um, I pretty much doubt he actually said storm the building, because I think if he had said that, that's what the libs would be, or the neolibs would be blasting all through the media and social media and whatever. But I do think he said come protest. That was allowed. But when he said go home, be peaceful, that was blocked. And um and then now he's basically conceded and said he's not really contesting the election. And they're still saying it's a coup. They're like, no, we gotta impeach him to stop a coup. How are you gonna coup somebody who basically conceded? It's but they'll be like, well, he said he's not gonna go to the inauguration, so that's basically a coup right there. I mean, I don't know. I feel like they're dumb enough where anything makes sense to them, like, because it just they refuse to be rational about any of this because that the truth doesn't suit their narrative. Um, but like what I think, like I could be wrong in this, but I think that this whole I don't know. I think that there's a good chance, at least, that if Trump did lure the people there to do this, then he's basically working with Biden to flush out, you know, anti-government people. And that might have been his role since 2015 when, Bill Clinton or whoever said that he should, run for president. Um, is basically, he's an actor. He's, a accomplished reality TV actor. He has reality TV, uh, you know, basically producers like working in his well, he had them like working in his campaign and like close to him. So my guess is that the point of Trump was to Bernie was like populist, like literally populist, for the people, of, by, and for the people. And so the way for the elites to, or one way maybe for the elites to like combat populism is to create fake populism. Uh, so they say, oh, all these people love Bernie. Um, and so, like, populist politics are getting a new lease on life. They're becoming reputable, and as opposed to the kind of patrician type of, follow the leader, quote unquote, liberalism that they prefer. And, or they don't even care if it's called liberalism, conservatism, or anything, whether it's, Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton or who, as long as like the plebes get in line and don't start trying to think for themselves or question things. Um, but with Bernie, it's like, he is actually representing the people. Uh, so it may be that Trump was put up to be the kind of, you know, um, alternative fake populist who, in the process, would bring, ignominy, whatever, like bring uh, populism into disrepute, like, and which is that's what they did, like from day one. They always, like, the media and stuff, they always were lumping Trump and Bernie together, and Trump and Bernie supporters together. So I see like Trump as a way to basically hurt Bernie and hurt Bernie supporters. You had, like, Trump was super like sympathetic to Berners in the primary, so he was a natural. Um, you know, it was natural that a lot of Berners in like 2016 ended up voting for Trump, um, just because they they didn't like Hillary and they saw Trump as at least somewhat sympathetic to populism and to the to the Bernie movement and whatever, and some of the things that the Bernie movement was pushing for, which he at least gave lip Trump at least gave lip service to during his campaign. Um, so it may have all been a way to try to just demonize populism, and because I think Trump, I do think he works with them. I do think the whole thing is a charade. Like, I kind of hope I'm wrong. I kind of hope that Trump is really this kind of semi populist guy who actually stands up to the media and actually stands up against the elites for whatever reason, like not just as a psyop to you know make it look like, because now it's like anybody now, if anybody like criticizes the media, they say like that's a Trump thing to do, and then they also say like Hitler did that. And so if I criticize the media and I say, oh, the mainstream media lies like constantly, then I can be associated with Trump, and by extension I can be associated with Hitler. And yeah, this is so these are all ways that Trump, at least in effect, helps the elites. And I think, it there's I think that it was all planned that way, and that I don't really think Trump is this anti-establishment guy. Like, he worked with Epstein, basically. I mean, his wife, his ex-wife, but his wife at the time, Ivana Trump, um, was working with Ghislaine Maxwell to select children for child trafficking by Epstein, and um, and a lot of the things Epstein was accused of, Trump was accused of. Like having these big parties in these mansions with full of elites, full of young girls. So, and Epstein was CIA. Epstein was MI6, Israeli military intelligence, CIA, NSA. Um, so, and if anybody doubts that, I mean, you can Google it, but certainly Alex Acosta said that. So, he said Epstein was intelligence. So it's not a theory. That's reality. And the fact that Trump worked closely with him, Trump and his wife worked closely with Epstein, suggests Trump was CIA, also basically, CIA, NSA. And both of them were heavily connected to Deutsche Bank, which I think was, had a lot to do with both of their fortunes. But chances are Deutsche Bank was or is basically either a CIA, MI6 kind of front company, or just is controlled by them, is taken over by them. Um, Certainly seems to have served their interests. Um, so, so Trump being like, uh, you know, a CIA asset or agent or something, um, like, yeah, it makes sense. They would pull him out for this. Like Bernie, like the Americans actually start becoming a little bit leftist, a little bit progressive, a little bit populist. So they need, because like elitists have always demonized populism. They've always said like they've always demonized the mob, the populist mob as just a bunch of wild bigots who just will, kill anybody just because they're a mob. They're just crazy. And populism has become this terrible thing. Like generally, like the word populist, like the populist party, the People's Party of the late 1800s, early 1900s was a was an awesome party. It was populist. It was supporting egalitarian programs, like policies, and it was very broad based, and it had a lot of it was very biracial, which was used to attack it in the South. The conservatives used that to attack it, but but now it's become that populism is somehow associated with bigotry, or like I know that there's a trajectory of how the word came into like infamy, but I'm not exactly sure. I know that Katie Halper uh, and Matt Taibbi, I think they've interviewed. There's a man who wrote about the history of populism, and so he explained a lot of how populism became demonized by the elites um, in the like 1930s or 40s or 50s, maybe whenever this was. Like one thing they tried to like there was some populists who were anti-Semitic. Like it wasn't a major feature of populism, but it was like the early 1900s. So unfortunately, probably most Christians had harbored some anti-Semitic sentiments. I mean, you kind of find that in early writings of the left, even, kind of everybody was anti Semitic. Like Karl Marx he was Jewish ancestry, but he was rabidly anti-Semitic in his writings, or at least some of his writings. Same with even Thomas Paine, who was kind of like the founder of the left, you could say, but he badmouthed Jewish people in his writings. So, but none of that was like a leftist thing. They were just kind of like, oh, like they were just, that was, I think, virtually universal, unfortunately. Um, and I think like Christianity, the point of Christianity is to foment anti-Semitism. That's my, I believe that the Romans created it for that purpose. But either way, so this was something where there was actually a lot of anti-Semitism, like virulent anti-Semitism in America in the early 1900s, but it was not among the populace. Like some of the populace had, some anti-Semitic views, but it was not a major part of their platform. Whereas there were like the fascists, like fascism was an international movement and it existed in America, and they and other people like them were the actual, people spreading anti-Semitism and leading the anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish movement in the U.S. But somehow some people were able to twist it to make it seem that it was the populists that were the real anti-Semites. So that's something obviously they've tried to do again with Jeremy Corbyn in Britain, saying that Labour was anti-Semitic, and particularly that radical labor, socialist labor, is anti-Semitic, based on very little. Um, is basically just yeah, just a psyop, just like it was done in the early 1900s against populism in the U.S. And they kind of tried to do the same to Bernie, but it was obviously more difficult, him being Jewish. Um, but this way of trying to like kill Bernie in the primary every time and then siphon some of his people over to Trump and basically make Trump, like that Trump is the populist and it's Trump populism versus, um, the you know, fake meritocracy of the elitist Democrats and the elitist Republicans who are hand in hand with them, the Bushites, etc., neocons. Um, so they, so like I think Trump is a psyop basically, and that he, the point of Trump is to lure anti-establishment people into uh following a bigot, like somebody who's been openly racist and etc., so that therefore populism can be dismissed as racist or something that's only adhered to by racists. Um, and and again with Bernie, like they always hurled the same stuff at Bernie and Trump, and they said like Bernie was racist because, you know, at least in 2016, they claimed like too many of his supporters were white males. So by virtue of that, he was racist. Um, and they basically did that again this time. They said the same thing, was even less true, like way less true this time. Not true at all this time. I mean, his supporters, he had very broad support, especially among millennials and Zoomers of every race, and gender. I mean, I think more of his supporters were women than men. I think he had more uh, non-white supporters than any other primary candidate. Um, but yeah, but they still said it anyway. They're like, oh no, no, all of his supporters are white men, and therefore he's racist, and they're racist. So I think this all ties in with Trump, and that this is a plan that they wheel out that they did in the 1900s. I think they've always done this. Like if you read classical literature, there's always this idea promulgated by the landowners and by the aristocrats and royalty that you have to prevent populism because populism is the real tyranny. Like the populace, the democratic people are like the egalitarian people are the real tyrants, and they're you know like those are things that if some leader comes promising like equality or whatever, universally they just are some kind of you know some shyster just trying to become a bigger tyrant the actual than the actual ruling class. And so that was like taught as fact to a lot of Europeans in the you know probably 16, 17, 1800s, or all throughout the last couple thousand years. And so it's this idea that, and I'm sure a lot of them know it's nonsense, but it's like a mantra. So populism is always bad. Like, you know, the like even the word we have, like the what is this? They say that somebody is a demagogue, right? Like even that, like even the fact that's a word with the connotations it has, it's probably from that tradition, from the idea that anybody who's going to lead the people and claim to be of, by, and for the people is really just a huge tyrant that's trying to, seize power from the duly, anointed elites, and is really going to be worse overall for the country, and especially for liberty, because they will just impose slavery on everybody. And but a lot of the times whenever there are instances that are similar to that, like people like Cromwell or Robespierre or Stalin or Mao, that do kind of fit that type of being uh, quote unquote egalitarian, populace, but ultimately just seizing power and being tyrants. But then if you actually look into those people, they were always like, they were never egalitarian. And nobody who knew them or knew about them expected them to be egalitarian. Um, I mean, I don't know about Robespierre, but I mean, basically all those characters pretty early on showed that they were of a tyrannical bent, and none of them really were of, by, and for the people. They weren't consulting the masses in anything, and they were basically the right wing of the left, if that can even be a thing. Um, I just consider them right wing to the extent that they were tyrannical. Otherwise, what does right and left mean? If left, I mean, left was founded on liberty, equality, fraternity. Liberty comes first. So if you don't support liberty, then you can be something, but you cannot be leftist in any historical sense of the word. Maybe a totally new, made up definition, but you should just get a new word for that. So yeah, I think like Trump is probably a psyop. Again, this is something I could be wrong, but either way, in effect, it's true that Trump helps demonize populism, and and I think this thing in DC, if anything, it was him. Like if he did have a hand in fomenting it, it was probably just to lure people so they could be put on lists and arrested and have their guns taken away and stuff like that, have their ability to fly airplanes taken away. Now they're like, and we're creating this snitch culture. It's also creating this justification. It's like the new 9/11. And yeah, it's the new justification to like burn whatever little fragments had remained of the Bill of Rights. Because they say, oh my God, there was a coup. There was like a bunch of unarmed people went into a building. So it was like literally a coup. Um, I mean, yeah, I think maybe some of them were